cosmic horror is not a thing in music. If you look through any discography of any kind and you look for horror in music, it's barely there. But if you look for cosmic horror specifically, you might not even find anything. Cosmic horror is a vague horror that tries to implicate the concept of the unknown that humanity can't comprehend. Invented at the turn of the Industrial Revolution through a variety of music genres that aim to invoke the sheer insignificance of the human soul in an industrial world. Through industrial orchestra, the noise music of the rissolos, and the somber escapism in blues and ballroom, the concept of human isolation grew. However, music turned into a finely oiled machine as the wars raged on and the experimentation of the unknown faded pretty quick. For that reason, cosmic horror as a concept in music is, even by my standards, extremely rare. There's the Eldritch worship in For a Lizard by Tortuga, the dreadful writing in Dex Dark by Radiohead, The Seer by Swans, My House by Jordan Go to Sleep, just the whole thing, and Sounds from the End of the World by Moonprod. Those are not highlights, but closer to the subject, because past a few notes like Angelina Yashova's Karman Vortex or some Lucid Planet songs, it's surprisingly hard to convey world-disobeying eldritch horror in music because that's not an audio medium. It's a literary medium. Books can do an incredible job at planting strange ideas in your head, but movies like Bird Box and Event Horizon have to hold back tons because of corporate meddling, and humans physically cannot hear a sound beyond them. If it's too loud, it'll kill you. If it's too quiet, you don't hear it. There's sub-frequencies like the Karman Vortex and unhearable high frequencies that can be played at extreme volumes you can feel but not hear. But if you're making music, your audience needs to hear it most of the time. You have to do a lot of serious heavy lifting to convey this concept. But there is one genre that has done it: dark ambient. And one band managed to convey this horror better than almost every other one: Psyclopean. Psyclopean are a dark ambient project, or dungeon synth 2, fronted by Sleestak, who may also be them. Inspired by Clutch and Black Sabbath, they claim their genre is progressive doom, and I hope you enjoyed that intro because that's literally all I can tell you. Like How to Disappear Completely, this is one of those acts that aren't very public, which is great for me because that's less work to do. They make a whole bunch of dreadful ambient / heavy rock based on dungeon synth, dream, and cosmic horror, especially inspired by literature. They have a lot of stretch compared to some of the acts that tend to run under this model. However, as I've been building up to, we're going to focus on their cosmic horror material. Though this will take the form of my Bowl of Heaven and Take Care videos, where I kind of just let the music speak for itself, while I go over some of the subtext and context because, well, it sounds like this. We'll get back to that. They cover a lot of ground in the field, and I'm not really going to focus on any particular part of their music right now. I'm kind of trying to hit a deadline, I apologize, this month kind of kicked my ass. Psyclopean, like many bands who use this release model, have a lot of albums. Let's start with the two newest I've mentioned on this channel, Nostalgiamancer and the Eschaton. Both of these are in the genre of dungeon synth, so what does that mean? Well, it's synth-based, so there's that. Dungeon synth is one of those genres that aren't as much defined by how they sound, but the mood they create. An ambient electronic genre made to convey a fantastical setting. It's like video game music. Nostalgiamancer is a quite calm and magical album. I would make the case it's pretty good for just relaxing. I don't have much to say. I like the use of its shiny synths and samples. The Eschaton, on the other hand, I would describe as dream synth, because it's got this super thick mixing and dense atmosphere that makes it sound dreamlike, which while also having this slightly depressing atmosphere to it. I best describe it as, you know when you're in a dream and for a brief moment you get that exciting lucidity of I can control myself, and you don't know what to do but just admire the colors because, well, it's hard to move. I once had a dream where I got that, ran outside of my room into this winter wonderland of purple dusk, and then I woke up. And I still remember that. This album feels like that. This exploration of a dream world you're not quite meant to be in. Nostalgiamancer feels like a more present album that focuses on the setting of itself. It's based off a Jack Vance novel, which I haven't read. The Eschaton is about a cosmic dream of the great end, which explains a lot. I start with these two because they're both very accessible and because they're outliers. Most of Psyclopean's work is focused on cosmic horror, specifically by that of Howard Phillips Lovecraft, the world's longest face. The name of the band, Psyclopean, is a combo of psych, like the mind, and cyclops. I assume the name Cyclopean is combined to make this all-seeing eye, like that of a god, presumably. Lovecraft's writing is so fascinating because that man was afraid of nearly everything. There's music that touches on cosmic dread, but Lovecraft specifically is a task. Very, very few artists have ever touched literature because they're just incompatible forms of sensory art. Or somewhat compatible. Music is just poetry with sounds in it, but it's more the concept of it. Lovecraft was a bizarre man of his time, and it is not hard to take his good ideas and separate them from the stupid ones because lots of his ideas were stupid. The funny part is that if he was born today, I bet he would be exactly the same. For The King in Yellow, Cyclopean touches on the author Robert W. Chambers, their short story collection, but the title piece, The King in Yellow. Chambers was admired by Lovecraft and his team, which I don't know what Lovecraft's team looked like, but I'm assuming it was just him with a hat and mustache. Chambers, in comparison, was a weird poetic writer like Thomas Ligotti, where they were more focused on the absurdity of the work, where the absurdity pointed to the dark abyss and parodied it. I learned about Cyclopean from The King in Yellow, and it came to me around the same time that Foundry made a video on The King in Yellow, and I think that's what brought that album to a lot of people, including me. I knew about the album before I watched that video, but I do credit that video for bringing it to me. Thanks, Mr. Robit. Almost by accident, both of these authors tap into a strange horror in beholding the unknown. The King in Yellow is this corrosive and corruptive influence on those who encounter it, where Lovecraft takes a superorganism perspective where, just by taking a small stroll, Cthulhu incites insanity and lucidity in the people through psychic shockwaves. Did either of these authors intend this? Probably not, but they're both dead, so who cares? The knowledge of the Eldritch book corrupts individuals into delusions of grandeur, while Cthulhu brings people to their knees to worship him because they're a god of an old world that's so beyond us. There is a subtext in Lovecraft's writing about it not affecting white people outside of artists, but Lovecraft was kind of a dumbass of his generation, so I'm passively letting it slide. Also, I would totally do that as a mixed race person. I would summon that bitch for fun. Seriously. Watch Chill Goblin's video on that man and try not to burst out laughing. He was a dork.
Also, I should mention, Lovecraft says the correct way to pronounce it is Clulu, which sounds like a children's cartoon rabbit. And I will not be calling it that. All right? This is like Lovecraft's version of like, no, it's pronounced Jif. Shut up. I don't respect you. I'm not changing my ways. I'm a traditional guy.
Besides, most people interested in the work of Minecraft focus in on the concepts, because really fantasy and storytelling are extremely unique to our species. We tell stories because in many ways we are the center of our world, and cosmic horror rips that out of us, reminding us in its disturbing dimensional rifts that we are not significant and we cannot possibly understand every aspect of the fabric of our universe, and there are forces beyond us that can squish us like the ants we truly are. Where they differ is that Call of Cthulhu is an external conflict, while The King in Yellow is internal. When I touched on Current 93, I briefly explored this with I Have a Special Plan for This World, but that poem was meant to explore insanity and paranoia. Its cosmic implications, even in its text, are kind of lampshaded because it's poetry. Taking that corruption of the beyond is normally reserved for deus ex machinas and stories to help or hurt characters, not corrupt them. The idea that by being observed, a force can exert control and influence over you is deeply haunting and perturbing. The Industrial Revolution corroded the spiritual and ritualistic beliefs of humanity as it brought machinery and realism into the quarters, cramming the working class into shacks while the rich lived in invincible luxury. I mean, it gave us medicine and science. Where that technology was used in disturbing ways, those ways were no longer built in religious superstition, but now in scientific interpretation, or misinterpretation. War of the Worlds came out during this time period, and that was an explicitly anti-colonialism piece on the cruelty and inhumanity of British invasion. Formed from the ashes of a hyper-religious world turned into an industrial one, wounds from human culture that we have not and probably will never heal from. I bring this up because I think the roots of cosmic horror come from that fear of insignificance, that we're just generally not that special. I'm not that surprised that both Wells and Lovecraft are on opposite sides when it comes to processing the world. One looks at it in a critical and disgusted lens through science fiction. The other fears it to justify the world that no longer works in his favor. And Chambers is there too. Early cosmic horror was tied in the insignificance of man, and through the same abusive systems remained for those with less fortune. The process of understanding your role was hard to escape, as if man was doomed to endlessly cycle around a black hole that had no consciousness, no light, and no will, just a natural force of a tormented world. Children of Relay is named for Relay, the Eldritch underwater city in both Call of Cthulhu and Shadow of Innsmouth especially. In Lovecraft's defense, there is no reality where the ocean isn't a little terrifying, especially if you live by it and tsunamis happen. The cover shows this Cthulhu shrouded in turquoise dark, a strange underwater temple he stares into with odd shards peeling off the ceiling. Actually, I think that's a statue. This album has a pretty wide soundscape with heavy bass drums, a wide orchestra playing at the front with electronics and electric noises to replicate that alien atmosphere and mental corruption. The people who receive these strange dreams view bizarre and alien landscapes, especially of the city, of this unearthly world built by the old gods. And in their gaze, they go mad from the terror of something mad lurking around the corners. Upon encountering the bizarre abandoned island in the ocean, the explorers go mad just by encountering Cthulhu's bizarre and cosmic appearance, as their minds cannot comprehend something extremely above and bizarre that does not match the understanding of physics and math. And this album seems to be trying to replicate that kind of energy, trying to illustrate this deep look into something so beyond an alien, that our perception is not able to perceive it. The terror of the city comes from how old it is, that there exist civilizations advanced in such a past that our perception of our universe is a single flick in time compared to the trillions of years that come before us, of chaos and nonsense that we will never understand. And Cthulhu, for that matter, is really the fact that just by going on a walk or rolling over in their sleep, they unleash psychic shockwaves that cause bizarre visions and nightmares in our human consciousnesses, inspires what Lovecraft calls cult worship, we call revolution, people to worship and bring his awakening in human sacrifices and strange sculptures. It reminds me of the Bloop in that way, this large culling of what was thought to be some dormant creature lurking beneath the deep. Though it's been confirmed to have been an iceberg calving, just a noise that deep, strange, long, and loud, heard across the ocean inspired us as a species to fear it. SCP-3000 is a god so large, old, and malleable that consumes human thought and distorts minds into paralysis to consume our brains, feasting off of souls who fall into the deep. The Leviathan is a large eldritch force so enormous that it almost exists as the earth itself, moving a fingernail's inch, has the power to incite tsunamis as large as the Chicxulub impact. We don't know a lot about the ocean, even now, and it's not a surprise that amidst our lack of knowledge, it is the one place where imagination runs rampant. The possibility of great beings so old and past us that it would be best in our land-dwelling ways to leave it the fuck alone. Cthulhu is the fear of the unknown, of accidentally awakening something so dangerous that its existence tears at the fabric of human understanding that lurks right behind our noses. Eldritch oceanic gods is very common in old mythologies because the ocean is so incomprehensibly large. The King in Yellow is a dense ambient project. Distant howls sing a distant omen. It starts with an opening that kinda sounds like sand dissipating, which repeats through the album like a storm brushing by. At points, whispers and voices sound as the influence of the titular king corrupts those into delusion. It reminds me of Faust by Current 93 in that way, touching on this internal fear of not being able to comprehend the world, having your mind flood your senses with internal panic at every corner. Not to mention, the composition of this album is incredible. The album freaks me out with how deeply scary it is, not only because it makes me sound like I'm going insane, but the longer it goes on, that insanity creeps in just because you're exposed to it for so long. It becomes normal and you adjust, but you never stop fearing something else. The bells in the album ring like chimes blowing in the wind of an approaching doom. The distorted electronics sound like that of towers, this alien yet familiar world haunting and hostile to your existence. The soundscape is horrific with minor keys and high-pitched noises. The terror of losing your mind constantly reinforces itself as the insanity of the album repeats again and again. There are glimpses into another world of children screaming and voices calling out through the abyss. The horror in The King in Yellow is not in the text. It comes from the corruption of the reader, that they believe they are the King in Yellow, that the world distorts to match that, all while this piece of unknown literature haunts and consumes them, consumes those who find it into insanity. Having discussed drone projects like it, I've come to understand that the mood of an album is greatly enhanced by what kind of noise you play. As I mentioned in my Take Care video, the emptiness of that album is meant to replicate the cultural death in the future, as seen by Mark Fisher, who the album was attributed to. The album as a result takes on a deadpanned and empty, even defeated tone. The cover is fluid and abstract. Here, the cover shows a hooded alien figure, cloaked in torn leaves and shrouded in tendrils, roaming a wide desert landscape. Either the king corrupting the world it aims to control, the victim of the book transformed into a husk of their own, roaming their world no longer familiar to them, or a reflection of the soundscape within. The album is haunting. It's a hard listen. No other album scares and scars me as badly as this. No other album terrifies me as badly as this one because it's so disorientating and frightening. It's meant to make you lose your mind. It's meant to replicate that sense of going insane. Going crazy. The fear in Cthulhu comes from him being this all-knowing old god that can forge reality in the minds of man. The fear in cosmic horror comes from something so unknowing and beyond us that it consumes us into dread. The fear in The King in Yellow is internal. You don't know what's happening. You can't stop it. It's simply a force that consumes the mind and destroys it. Psyclopean's other projects share this look into the beyond, many with beautiful album covers, usually focused on Lovecraft mythos, but since seem to be extending to other literature on the nature of dreams, soundscape, and the eternal end. A Dreamer's Tales is a concept album about the recording of dreams in the mind itself. It's got a track list, and if you're looking for somewhere to start, I'd suggest that album, along with a bunch of projects from their other acts like Sleestak and some collaborations with other post-rock and instrumental acts. Who they remind me the most of besides How to Disappear Completely is Troika of all bands. who share this wide progressive metal soundscape, but especially in the 2022 project The Same Dream. Though that album is mostly about grief. And I think what makes Psyclopean so good at this isn't just that they started in an already unusual genre like dungeon synth, but they expand to genres familiar to the wide and bizarre, post and prog rock. They have these strange electronic feedbacks that are designed to etch terror and fear into your mind, and they are amazing at it. They have a ton of albums, so there's a lot to peruse if you're interested at all. The full moon will be out tonight. Well, no, it won't. It's a waxing gibbous, but still, tonight we dine on blood. We feed on the torture. We sing with the ghosts, and we bring our great old one. I wish you all a very happy Halloween indeed, Cthulhu Patargan.